Okay, it's Friday, January 30th, 2026. And look, whatever you're doing right now, you might want to just put it down for a second. Because we are starting with something absolutely massive. We're looking at a strategic shift that could genuinely change the map of the war in Eastern Europe.
It's a huge deal. The UK has just confirmed a delivery of very significant number of heavy-lift autonomous systems to Ukraine.
And before you roll your eyes and think, great, another press release about some small quadcopters,
Yeah.
just stop. This is not about the little buzzing drones you see all over social media.
Not at all. We are talking about a twin-engine, long-range, heavy lifter that has just completely shattered the 2,000-kilometer range barrier.
It's a watershed moment, isn't it?
It really is.
Yeah.
We aren't just talking about a new gadget here. We are looking at a system that, effectively connects the UK's industrial base directly to the front lines in the Donbass.
It's an air bridge.
An air bridge with no human pilot. And it's happening right now.
This is the kind of development that changes logistics, and frankly, it changes survival rates for the defenders of Europe. If you're following this war, and if you understand that defending Ukraine is about defending stability in Europe, you need to understand the hardware that's making this possible.
Yeah.
So here's what you need to do. N up. Subscribe to Defense Reports, your go-to source for timely, in-depth military and defense reports.
Trust me, you are going to want to stay ahead of the curve on this one.
I'm Alex. Join me with Arya in the latest podcast by Defense Report for sharp, no-nonsense breakdowns of the latest in global defense news, military technology, and strategic developments. And today, we're going to cover the Wind Racer's ULTRA. Now, when people think of military drones, they usually have, two images in their head, right? They either picture the Reaper, that sleek gray predator with missiles under its wings, or they think of those tiny commercial Mavics dropping grenades. But the ULTRA, it doesn't really fit in either of those boxes.
No, it really, really doesn't. And honestly, if you walk past one on a runway, you might not even realize it's a piece of advanced military tech.
Right.
You might think it's, a high school science project that got a little out of hand.
That's a very polite way of putting it. It is not exactly a thing of beauty.
It isn't.
Okay.
It's incredibly boxy. It's got a high T-tail, a twin boom configuration, so, two tails sticking out the back for stability, and a 10-meter wingspan. That's about 32 feet.
It looks utilitarian.
It looks like a cargo hauler from the 1950s.
Mm.
But that whole aesthetic is completely intentional. It is redefining how wars are fought behind the lines. It's solving a problem that has plagued armies, since Roman times.
Yeah.
How do you get stuff to the front without getting your supply trucks blown up?
And here's the cliffhanger. This is the part that just blew my mind when I was reading the reports for this dive. We're talking about a drone that runs on engines you'd probably find on a high-end lawnmower. It's built out of stuff you could get at a hardware store. It flies itself without GPS, and as of this month, it can travel from London to Kyiv on a single tank of gas.
That 2,000-kilometer figure is the real game changer. We know Ukraine is producing something like 8 million FPV drones a year now. They are effectively the world's first drone state, but those little drones have a range of maybe 10, 20 kilometers at most.
They need to be supplied.
They need ammo, batteries, food, all of it brought to them. The ULTRA solves that middle mile nightmare.
Okay, let's unpack this. In our notes, we've been calling it the Jeep of the skies. I want to dig into that because I think that analogy explains the philosophy here better than any spec sheet could.
The Jeep analogy is perfect. Think about the Willys Jeep in World War II. It wasn't fast, it wasn't comfortable, and it definitely wasn't armored.
But it was everywhere.
It was everywhere, it was rugged, and crucially, you could fix it with a hammer and a wrench. The ULTRA is built on that exact same philosophy.
Which brings us to the materials. In a world of carbon fiber, radar-absorbing composites, and these delicate stealth coatings, the ULTRA is made of aluminum.
Yep. About 95% high-grade aluminum.
That sounds almost retro. Why would you go backward when everyone else is pushing for lighter composites?
It's not about going backward. It's about understanding the reality of the Ukrainian battlefield. Carbon fiber is fantastic for performance, sure. But just imagine for a second. You have a carbon fiber drone operating near Kharkiv. It takes a piece of shrapnel through the wing, or maybe it has a rough landing in a muddy field.
Okay.
To fix carbon fiber properly, you need a specialized environment. You need an autoclave, humidity control.
Yeah.
You basically need a clean room.
Right, you can't just slap some duct tape on a structural spar and hope for the best.
Exactly. You need a laboratory, but with aluminum. If an ULTRA takes some shrapnel, a Ukrainian mechanic in a forward trench doesn't need a lab.
What do they need?
They need a welding torch, sheet of scrap metal, and a rivet gun. They can patch that hole in 20 minutes, check the control surfaces, and send it right back into the fight.
That is such a critical distinction. It's about damage tolerance, not just peak performance.
It creates a fleet that doesn't become what we call hangar queens. Planes that just sit on the ground waiting for specialist parts. The old Terre is designed to be abused and kept flying. It accepts that war is dirty and destructive.
And that off-the-shelf idea extends to the engines, too. I was looking at the specs, and the original versions used Briggs and Stratton engines.
Yeah.
Those are literally standard four-stroke combustion engines.
Essentially generator engines, yeah. Now, the newer Mk2 versions, the ones in this January 2026 delivery, they've upgraded to Hirth F-23 engines.
Which are?
Dedicated two-stroke aircraft engines, but the logic is the same. These are internal combustion engines. They aren't sensitive, high-maintenance jet turbines that need pristine maintenance schedules.
Which also means they're cheap to run. I saw a stat that the Mk2 version has halved the fuel cost per kilogram of payload.
And critically, it uses standard fuel. You don't need highly refined, specialized jet propellant that's hard to get near the front line. You can run these on regular fuel. It's the democratization of heavy airlift.
So we've got this rugged aluminum box flying through the sky. But the breaking news we started with, this announcement, is about the capability leap. Let's talk numbers, because range is just a word until you actually map it out.
The headline number is 2,000 kilometers. That's the new maximum range.
And to put that in perspective for everyone,
That's roughly the distance from London to Marrakesh. Or, critically for this war, it is the distance from London to Kyiv.
or from a secure manufacturing hub in Western Europe directly to the Eastern Front.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It creates a logistical pipeline that just bypasses all the traditional bottlenecks. And it's not flying empty, it's carrying a payload of 200 kilograms.
About 440 pounds. Now, I can already hear a skeptic asking, why does a 200-kilogram payload matter? A C-130 transport plane carries tons. Why is this specific size so important for Ukraine right now?
It matters because of the drone wall. We've talked about this in previous deep dives. Ukraine has established a zone, maybe 20 kilometers from the front line, where basically nothing manned survives.
The air is just too saturated.
It is. If you drive a supply truck into that zone, a Russian FPV drone hits it. If you fly a helicopter, a missile hits it.
So the first mile, getting supplies into the country by train, that's okay. The last mile, the soldier running to a foxhole, that's manageable, but that middle mile...
The middle mile is a death trap. That's where logistics convoys get slaughtered.
Yeah.
But the soldiers in those trenches, the ones operating the millions of FPVs holding the line, they need constant resupply. They need batteries, food, blood plasma, ammunition.
And before, you had to risk human drivers in vans to run that gauntlet.
The Ultra-Ray automates that risk. Instead of risking a driver's life to get 200 kilograms of batteries to a forward base, you load up an Ultra-Ray, it flies autonomously, drops the cargo, either by landing on a dirt road or using a precision parachute drop, and then it flies home.
And because it's aluminum and has cheap engines, if it does get shot down, you've lost a machine. You haven't lost a trained pilot or a father.
And here's the kicker.
Yeah.
Unlike the kamikaze drones, which are all one-way trips, the Ultra-Ray is reusable. It's designed to fly hundreds of missions. It comes back to base.
It changes the economics of the whole thing.
Completely. You're amortizing the cost of that drone over dozens and dozens of supply runs.
Okay, that brings us to the how. You said it flies itself. I feel like we hear autonomous thrown around a lot, but usually there's still a guy in a shipping container in Nevada with the joystick.
Right, that's remote piloted. This is not that. This is what Wind Racers calls masterless autonomy.
Masterless. That sounds almost sci-fi.
It does a little, but in this context, it's a massive safety and security feature. The avionics system, which was developed by a company called Distributed Avionics, it doesn't rely on a remote pilot. There's no joystick.
So what do?
You tell it, take this cargo to these coordinates, and it handles everything. The takeoff, the flight path, stabilization, the landing, all of it on its own.
So why is that better than having a pilot?
Electronic warfare.
Right.
We know the Russians are jamming absolutely everything. The Eastern Front is just a black hole for radio signals. If you're flying a drone that needs a joystick, you need a radio link.
And if they jam that link?
The drone crashes or drifts away.
Yeah.
The OTRA doesn't need that link.
So it's flying silent, it's ghosting them?
Essentially, yes. It doesn't emit a control signal, so it can't be easily triangulated.
Yeah.
And even more impressively, it solves the GPS problem.
Right, because GPS is jammed or spoofed constantly in that region.
Correct. So the Ultra uses a layered approach. It has multiple anti-jamming GPS antennas, But if GPS goes dark completely, it just switches to internal inertial sensors and optical navigation.
Optical navigation, so it's looking at the ground.
Exactly. It uses cameras to look at the terrain below, and it compares what it sees to an internal map. It's basically saying, okay, I see a river bend that matches this coordinate. It navigates by sight, just like a human pilot would have done in the pre-digital age.
That is incredibly robust. It's not fragile to system failure.
That is the key word, robust. The whole system is designed so that if a sensor fails or a servo acts up, the software just compensates. It doesn't give up. It fights to keep the plane in the air.
This just creates a supply line that is incredibly difficult to disrupt electronically.
It does.
And it really highlights the scale of support we're seeing from the UK. We started the show with the breaking news from this month, January 2026, but this didn't just happen in a vacuum.
No, the scale has been ramping up significantly. Back in late 2025, the numbers were already impressive. The UK delivered something like 85,000 drones of various types to Ukraine in just 6 months.
Wow.
The ULTRA is the heavy lifter in that mix, but it's part of a huge coordinated wave.
And there was a big funding boost for this, wasn't there?
Yes, a 600 million IR investment into the UK drone industry, specifically to support this effort. The UK government and NATO have officially recognized Wind Racers as a trusted partner. This isn't just a startup experiment anymore. This is a cornerstone of NATO logistics strategy.
And we have to look at the other side, too. Ukraine isn't just taking these drones, they're integrating them into this whole ecosystem. I saw the phrase drone state in the source material.
As a very apt description, reports are highlighting that Ukraine now has a production capacity of 10 million drones annually.
10 million, that number is just staggering.
Now, most of those are the small, expendable FPVs, but they're building a layered air force. You have the FPVs at the tip of the spear. You have interceptors like the Octopus project, which is a joint UK-Ukraine drone designed to hunt Russian Shaheds.
And then you have the logistical backbone,
Which is the ULTRA. It's a complete ecosystem. The FPV kills the tank, the Octopus protects the sky, the ULTRA brings the ammo.
Right. And politically, this is getting noticed at the highest levels. The ULTRA was actually displayed in the Speaker's Court at the UK Parliament.
It was. And Minister Al Carnes made a very stark statement that just summarizes the whole situation perfectly. He said, drones are now causing more casualties than artillery.
That is a fundamental shift in doctrine. For 100 years, artillery was the king of battle, and now it's being dethroned by cheap flying robots.
And the ULTRA ensures that the new king, the drone operators, have the supplies they need to keep fighting. The logistics enable the lethality.
But the ULTRA isn't just a flying truck, is it? I mean, yes, it carries cargo, but you mentioned it's modular. What else can it do?
That's the beauty of that boxy design. It has a massive internal volume, 700 liters.
Yeah.
And you can just swap out the cargo floor. So today, you might be running ammo to the front. Tomorrow, you slide in a sensor package, and you have a long-endurance ISR platform, intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance.
So it can spy as well as supply.
Absolutely. Because it has that 2,000-kilometer range and over 10 hours of endurance, it can loiter. It can map territory. It can act as a set of eyes that never gets tired.
That makes sense.
In fact, before it was famous in Ukraine, the British Antarctic Survey actually used it to map Antarctica.
Wait, really? Antarctica? That seems like a pretty extreme pivot.
It was the proving ground. Think about it. Extreme cold, high winds, zero infrastructure, no paved runways. If it can navigate and survive in the Antarctic winter, it can survive a Ukrainian winter.
That's an incredible stress test.
It proved the platform was rugged enough for the harshest environments on Earth. If it can handle the South Pole, it can handle the Donbass.
So looking forward then, because this technology never stands still, what's the next evolution for the ULTRA?
Swarming.
Swarming. I love the sound of that, but it also sounds a little bit terrifying.
Well, it's the logical next step.
Yeah.
Wind Racers is working with Purdue University on a program called ADA3. And the goal is to move from one operator, one drone, to one operator monitoring 10 or maybe 20 aircraft simultaneously.
So one person sits at a laptop and just manages an entire fleet of supply drones.
Exactly. Imagine a swarm of ULTRAs lifting off simultaneously from a base in Poland, not to attack, but to resupply an entire sector of the front in one massive wave.
Like the Berlin airlift, but with no pilots.
Precisely. Or, in a civilian context, to autonomously fight wildfires by dropping retardant in a coordinated line. It overwhelms the enemy's ability to intercept because of the sheer volume, and it maximizes the throughput of supplies.
That really connects back to that masterless idea, doesn't it?
I guess. If the drones can talk to each other and coordinate their flight paths, you don't need a control tower. You just need a mission objective. It makes the logistics flow continuous, not episodic.
So to wrap this all up, what we're looking at is a British-designed aluminum twin-engine box that costs a fraction of a helicopter, flies itself, ignores jamming, and is currently keeping the Ukrainian front line supplied from as far away as London.
That is the summary. It's a shift from high-tech and fragile to smart, rugged, and mass-producible. It represents a shift to some people are calling autonomous sovereignty. Ukraine isn't just fighting with weapons. They're fighting with a whole new industrial logic. And thanks to support from partners like the UK, that logic is winning.
It's just fascinating how the boring stuff logistics is actually where the most radical innovation is happening. Everyone watches the explosion videos on social media, but the drone that delivered the explosives to the operator, that's the unsung hero.
Wars are won by logistics. Amateurs talk tactics. Professionals talk logistics. The LTRA is the professional's tool in this war.
Here's a final provocative thought for you to mull over as we sign off. We're looking at a future where the supply run, historically one of the most dangerous and essential jobs in any war, is becoming extinct for humans. If a machine can fly from London to Kiev with 200 kilograms of gear on its own for a fraction of the cost of a van, what does that do to the very concept of a front line? If logistics are just ghost operations, the battlefield becomes fluid in a way we have never seen.
It also raises the question, if you remove the humans from the logistics chain, does the war ever have to stop for rest? It allows for a tempo of operations that is completely relentless. It's a chilling but very important thought.
You've been listening to Defense Report by Alex and Aria, where we analyze the latest in military strategy, global defense, and advanced weaponry.
Stay informed and stay critical.
Subscribe to Defense Reports, your go-to source for timely, in-depth military and defense reports. We'll catch you next time.